Hey folks, this is a prompt from ChatGPT. No, I'm kidding on. Hey folks, how you doing? It's Mark. It's the On Some Podcast. That's Christopher. Say hi, Christopher.
Hi, Christopher. And can I pass it on?
Yeah, pass it on. Pass the buck.
We have with us, for the first time in a long time, give it up for David John Weaver.
Hello, my name is David John Weaver.
Maybe we should make like a ChatGPT chat which is Weaver and just use that in episodes from now on.
That would be hilarious. I know, it's nice to be back, thanks. What was the last thing I did here? I can't remember.
Christmas?
No, I've been in here since.
The Motley Crue and Kiss.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, Motley Crue and Kiss.
So that was before Christmas,
Yeah, that was
wasn't
before
it?
Christmas, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Man, heady days. I actually kind of lost my mind for 2 months after that. That such was the intensity of that episode.
It was powerful.
Fucking
powerful
overwhelming.
You got high off your own supply.
Have you heard much from either Tommy Lee or indeed from Gene?
Gene?
No, they haven't given me a shout.
I thought we
Neither.
might have, Biffy Clyro style. I thought we might have had some angry tweets or maybe tweets of support.
I think I was like, compared to the haters out there, man, I think you're a pretty small fry. There's probably a whole podcast dedicated to hating these bands.
I have seen that. I think is it Hellfest or one of like the big
Hellfest.
ones.
They're both playing it.
They are both on the same level of headline. Kiss are not bigger than Motley Crue.
I mean,
in terms of headlining a festival in France.
That's the French.
Well, yeah. And, well, I guess we'll talk about the French
today. We are going to talk about the French today at length. Mark, any admin? Well, I know we've got a couple of bits.
Yeah, we've got 2 new subscribers joining us this week. Kevin McCormick, thanks for joining us, Kevin. And Ian Thornton. Hi, Ian.
Ian Thornton, straight in the Analog Record Club tier. You're in for a treat.
You're in for a treat. And there is no Kiss, so... do with that information as
Good
well.
luck shoehorning them into an unsung record club. Yeah. Even I couldn't manage that. Dave chose the record this week. That was how we were able to coax him out of his
metal hole
missionary work that he does. Travelling around islands in the South Pacific, spreading the good word about Meshuggah's latest record.
Yeah, that's what I try and do. I'm a polyrhythmic missionary.
Half the time he gets towards the beach, they start throwing things at him and he flees.
Because they can't understand if they need to throw it in like 4/4 or 13/6. Or
just because they want somebody to slam a fucking chorus down, like a little bit of Limp Bizkit, bit of POD. We're talking about POD before we started recording.
Are they missionaries?
I think
actually,
so.
I think in their own way.
Yeah. Spreading the Lord's message.
I was the guy in a loincloth at the shore throwing rocks at POD.
Yeah, you were the 90s. No, keep your modern world away from us.
Because POD represent the encroachment of the modern world.
Yeah.
I saw them live once in the bar. They headlined the Barras.
Fucking hell.
I were there. I actually Skindred.
POD did the tour of 100 Reasons for MTV before that VMA Awards in Edinburgh. I
think I'm going to see 100 Reasons on Friday.
I am. I've had tickets for 2 years because it's been cancelled twice.
So, you know what? The 3 of us might all be at the same show.
Nice.
Yeah, and
do you go see My Vitriol?
And here it is. My Vitriol are opening, and Sam Warner from My Vitriol has a secret Instagram account which is anti-vax fucking Illuminati bullshit.
So we throw things at him.
He is a little fucking wretch.
He's a little wretch.
So yeah, well,
our Hell is for Heroes nice guys though. Surely
they all
nice
seem
guys.
really decent.
I think they're too boring to be like.
That's fine.
Any note, like
Hell is for Heroes and 100 Reasons have new records or some new recordings.
Yeah,
out.
so Hell is for Heroes have got a new song out, but 100 Reasons have a new album coming out. They weren't going to do a new album, but then the pandemic delayed this tour twice, so they're like, okay, we're out of record, and some of the songs are actually no bad.
Well, there you go.
Fuck's, eh?
There's hope for them yet. So we will probably all be at that then. It looks like that'll be
old school.
Yeah, it'll be like a Highlander-esque scenario. Only one of us will walk it.
It's in the bar. I don't think. Do you think it'll be really full? It's a Barras. I don't know. I don't like.
I don't know. It's 28 quid for a ticket. So
yeah.
Was it? I think I paid 15 for mine 2 years ago.
Well,
before the pandemic,
yeah, wow. Or their opinion of themselves went up considerably.
No, it's when I add My Vitriol on, then it just makes them more expensive.
Some's got a lot of overheads to deal with. Legal team fighting the Zog.
Going to QAnon conferences. All the lovely stuff.
So, David, this week?
Yeah, this is actually about a gig that Mark and I saw last week.
Indeed.
But I wasn't there,
You
and
weren't
therefore
there,
the
so it was
triumvirate was not
It
complete.
was only 2 out of 3, so it was only 66% power.
Dave didn't get the full experience of this gig, which he would have enjoyed a lot more than I did, maybe.
What do you mean?
The main support band, we played for 40 minutes,
Oh yeah,
by the
that's
way.
right. I turned up just to see the main band,
Yeah.
but I missed Alien Weaponry.
Alien Weaponry,
You-
three piece, sound like Godsmack, but singing Maori because they're from New Zealand. And you're fucking boring, man.
That
Really
is-
dull.
So the gig
Not
that we
fun.
went to see was Gojira
Gojira, yeah.
at the Glasgow O2 Academy.
Possibly the worst venue in the world.
It sounded pretty good, actually.
Yeah, it
Did
sounded
it?
alright, yeah.
I never have a terrible time at the Academy, but what is incredible is that like somehow you've got loads of tiers and at no point can you see.
yeah, basically.
Whereas you go to the Barrowland and it's just one level and everywhere you can see.
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it. It's like you're always. I think there must be like a minimum height policy for 75% because it's always big cunts that are in there,
Yeah.
and it's really annoying.
They do manage to warp physics in a way to make every gig worse, as far as I'm concerned. I've seen some.
But it sounded good.
It did sound a lot better than I thought it was going to sound. Because
Yeah.
the Barra sounds, not the Barras, the Academy always sounds like it's got a fucking wet blanket over the PA. Do you know what I mean? So we can't really fuck up metal.
Yes, you can. You
Yeah.
very,
I
very
suppose.
much can.
But I guess maybe they're just used to playing at venues or shit sounding.
But I think they
They're
are
so
also pretty well regarded in terms of being very, very good live
They are.
and being good at sound.
That probably
and,
helps.
and have confetti cannons.
Well, yeah, I know.
What?
That's like an extra 800 quid on the venue hire. I know
Gojira
that for a fact.
have confetti cannons.
Yeah.
It's fucking brilliant.
Is that environmentally sound?
I don't think it is.
I think of the whales.
Think of the whales.
Fucking hell. What if pigeons broke into the venue at night and ate that confetti and died?
That is true.
I mean, they don't care about pigeons. It's literally just sea mammals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flying otters.
Joe's a sea shepherd, isn't he? So.
Flying otters.
That's what pigeons are, basically.
Flying otters.
Flying otters, rather than flying whales.
Not rats of the sky.
Oh,
Is
they
that
are rats of the sky.
Rats
Okay,
of
I'll
the
give you
sky, I
that.
think, is the standard.
Flying otter.
Is a Latin name.
Yeah, maybe that's an albatross is the flying otter. So Mark, you weren't particularly knew much about Gojira before you were there because of your good lady friend.
Yeah, so Danny's a really big Gojira fan. She fucking loves this record as well. She says it's their best record. So she agrees with you there.
Good.
This
and-
record is.
Yeah, so we're doing From Mars to
From Mars to
Sirius,
Sirius,
2005 opus.
Awaken me that I'm still driven, and I just plunge into this sea of light.
So I'd heard them in passing, mostly bits of this record. I'd heard Flying Wheels before.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't heard a lot of the stuff before that. Maybe The Way of All Flesh. That was album after this, actually, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's on the length there was that song. Is it Embrace the? It's fucking brilliant. Anyway, I've got it written
Dolphin.
Embrace the world. Embrace the world. But apart from that, I'd heard bits and pieces, but never actually sat down and listened to them properly.
And Chris, you just weren't very aware of
they're
their
a
music at all.
A peripheral vision band. They're a band that I see the name all over the place. And I wasn't quite sure why I had never engaged with them more, because some of these bands like Meshuggah you pick up on and then they stick. But Gojira, for one reason or another, had never stuck, and so this was an opportunity to try and find out why.
Well, for me, I definitely remember this album coming out in 2005. I think I'd seen live video of them performing from their previous record. They did a DVD called The Link Alive. when this album came out, and I remember it got a lot of press in the UK, and it broke them, from France. We'll talk about their history and stuff, but I definitely remember this album sticking with me, and I was like, holy shit, yes, I'm very much into this. And then I was excited for the next record, and when it came out, I was like slightly underwhelmed. And then after that, I just kind of forgot about them. I would go back to this record, and I don't know, maybe I just wasn't reading Kerrang anymore, and I kind of wasn't aware of like what they were doing. An album came out 6 or 7 years ago, Magma. And I remember hearing a couple of tracks off that, and I was like, oh, they've gone bigger, but still pretty good, but it never really hooked me again. And then I didn't even know they were playing until about 3 weeks ago, and I was like, fuck it, I'll just go to that, and went along. I had no idea that they were like selling out the Academy, and they're massive. Yeah. And they do appear to be one of the biggest metal bands in the world right now. Yeah. In terms of, I don't know, doing big heavy shit. And doing really well, but
they've got an enviable balance of success and credibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Put it that way. Like, they're not stupid metal.
They've not done a Bring Me the Horizon or they're not even done a Lamb of God and just sort of repeated the same shit the whole time.
I'm interested that you sort of drifted away from them, because as I understand it, certainly from taking on board the opinions of people that are more steeped in the band than I, they again, talking of mighty triumvirates, the 3 albums that they released in a row are all considered to be kind of pretty close to each other in terms of quality. This one, The Way of All Flesh, and then L'Enfant Sauvage, I think the 3 of them are all sort of held in pretty high esteem and seen as being a consistent run. And then there is not in the minds of everybody, but in the minds of a lot of people, a real dip around Magma, just because it
But then Magma is the one that has sold the most and got them to a whole new audience.
Yeah, they changed their style quite a bit. But let's take a little bit of background on them as well, for the sake of people. So they're French progressive death metal, is that the best?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they certainly started as progressive technical death metal, and then they've sort of on the album we're doing, there are bits of post metal, and then later on you could just say heavy metal, I guess. They are always technical, but they embraced a big chorus now and then as well.
They were formed, this is surprising, formed in 1996, fucking ages ago. They're from Ondre, which is...
Have you ever been to Ondre?
Well, I've actually been very, very close to Ondre, which is spelled Ondres. It's just north of the towns of Biarritz and Bayonne on the southwest coast of France. I've been to both of them. I've played shows in both of them. Really nice. It's actually the French Basque Country. I think a lot of people know that the Basque Country actually continues into France. So that's the French Basque Country there. It's about 2 hours down the coast from Bordeaux, and we actually gave Gojira a mention when we did
Year of No Light.
Year of No Light, because they were part of that kind of metal movement on that coast of France. I think Year of No Light, I think, formed in 2001, so it was a wee bit after these guys, but their first album came out in 2001. Current members, is it the original 4?
So they were originally called Godzilla.
Yeah.
There's the 2 brothers, which is Joe and Mario Duplantier. So they were in a band that had another name before that.
Was it Eclipse or something like that?
Yes. So I mean, that's like brothers 17, and I think Mario was 12 when he was when they kicked off. And the guitarist Christian Andreu. So they were always together, and they had a different bassist. But then in, I think it was 1998, Jean-Michel Labadie came on.
So since they put out their first record, it's been the same
since
people.
they've been called Gojira as well. Yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty refreshing as well. I think I relied a lot on some pretty good little video things by fans online. The Punk Rock NBA, that guy Finn McKenty, he's a good one on it, and I think a thing called Metal Trenches is a pretty decent one as well about their albums. So just shout out to that, because that was pretty useful. Dave, I've seen it written that you can immediately identify a Gojira riff. Is that true in your opinion?
Nearly. I think I'll talk about what makes this album unique to me is that it's the most Gojira for me, because like the production is a little less specifically metal, but there's definitely a way that you can listen to Gojira and they've got a real chug about them. They use the sort of octaved rather than power chords,
pitch shifter.
a bit of pitch shifter as well,
Pick scrapes. They do a lot of the pick
a
scrape.
lot of pit scrapes and a lot of pitched harmonics as well. But there's a specific that they do.
The Gojira slide.
Yeah, it's like a harmonic he does up high up in the neck, and it's like gives that really specific pick scrape sound, which Code Orange started using it quite a lot when they got even heavier with Forever and stuff like that. I hadn't really heard that before until Code Orange did it. Yeah, and then I realised that it probably came from Gojira.
They lifted it. Yeah. Also, how good is the drummer? Because it seems he's amazing, very highly thought of. Yeah, that's Mario Duplantier. He does it actually a lot of the press as well, which is pretty refreshing. So he's seen as being one of the reasons that I guess a lot of people were persuaded to get in it, because I guess they're a little bit po-faced in the sense that they're not outrageous and flamboyant, and they don't have this really like pretentious or daft or theatrical shtick around them. They're just a very good band. But Mario Duplantier seems to be the reason that a lot of metal fans who might otherwise have found them a bit grey.
Well, it was interesting. I hadn't seen them live before. I had tickets to see them in 2008, I think, and then I couldn't go. But it was interesting seeing Mario live, and having not watched anything of them for the last 15 years. On that video of Link Alive, he's wearing like old tatty Reebok trainers, and there's a camera just next to his feet, and his bass drum work is ridiculous. And that was mostly what I knew about him. He's very good at drums. But then live at the Academy in front of 2,500 people, he was taps off, he was standing up, twirling his sticks. Like the crowd were doing the classic Glasgow thing of here we fucking go. And he actually stood up at one point and he had a sign that says here we fucking go.
Did his research, man. Fucking
well, yeah. And I was like,
showman,
this guy is a cross between Thomas Hackett from Meshuggah and Tommy Lee.
Absolutely, 100%. That's exactly what I thought as well. He's very much a showman, and he kind of has to, because the rest of them don't really do very much on stage. They just kind of stand there and
totally. They just get the fucking job done.
You know?
Yeah, a lot of the personality seems to come from him, and he's incredibly tight as a drummer, like very tight, but also has a lot of groove to him, which I think seems to be the thing that people have really warmed to about him.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and much like Meshuggah, he's doing polyrhythms, but not in as mathematical a way. But
yeah, it's not as brain fuckery, you know what I mean? It's a bit more, there's more of a Pantera thing hidden in there.
But there are bits where he's just doing mad double bass runs, but there's little fills going on that I've just got like this nice sort of loose jazzy sort of vibe going on, and that it really adds. It's just so refreshing having seen so much metal that is just triggered and just like let's see it as fast as you can go, and it's just like, and who cares?
It's funny you say that actually then, Dave, about the jazzy fills, because I believe that he started playing drums, then he took time out and went and learned jazz drumming for like 7 years or something like that. He studied it like to try and add that to his playing, because he felt he was just a little bit too one-dimensional. So well,
it's interesting. They all seem like kind of interesting guys, not necessarily on stage, the other three, but they're all, I don't know, they seem quite wholesome. They're all into classical music as well as, you know, death metal and everything. They're all artists of, you know, various degrees. So the Duplantier brothers themselves, I don't know if you checked, but the town they come from, Andres, on the Wikipedia for that page, the only thing about that town is that they come from it and that their dad is a famous architectural drafter. And then also their brother,
that you can be famous for
their
that.
brother is a photographer. So like there's 4 people mentioned on that town Wikipedia and they're all the same family.
Jings.
Yeah, he married a photographer as well.
So you get the feeling that they come from like a very artistic, creative, interesting background.
Yeah, because he went to university during like years Gojira to do a degree in fine arts as well.
Yeah.
So he had them on sale at the show. Like, he
draws on his drum heads.
And apparently started doing that because they were playing a show in Seattle and they just were making no money and they'd run out of merch and they needed to sell something, and he had 10 drum skins and he just drew on them and he sold them like pretty much straight away.
Well, see,
that's pretty cool.
I know where they got that idea because my flatmate Luigi, he went on tour with his duo band who were equally eccentric Italians, and they forgot the merch box. So on the way to the show, they stopped by a broken wall, picked up a bunch of bricks and wrote Kabobo on the bricks, and then managed to sell all of the bricks at the show.
Yep.
Nice.
Art.
Yep. By the way, can we just put ourselves in the place of some other resident in Andres? Do you think they resent the Duplantiers?
I know, those are fucking Duplantiers, man.
Duplantiers, they must be like, oh, there they go again. Like they own the place. Fucking Wikipedia. I just think other people in the town are desperate to get on that. Maybe they edit it and then the Duplantiers edit it back to just us.
They both live in New York now.
Yeah, because they were actually US and French dual citizens.
The one was American.
Yeah.
So what that means is when someone edits the Andres Wikipedia and then goes to bed in Andres, they've got 5 hours on them. They can just edit. By the time they get up the next morning, it's back to just the Duplantiers. So Finn McKenty, the guy that does Punk Rock MBA, made some really interesting points about Gojira. The main one that I thought merited bringing up was they kind of compared them to some of the straight up metal acts like Bring Me the Horizon, Slipknot and Ghost, and kind of observed that those bands check a lot of boxes. You know, they have, especially with regards to choruses and a charismatic frontman, that kind of thing, something that the audience can really hone in on. And Gojira, I think it's safe to say, are a much denser, subtler thing. Subtler might sound like an odd choice of words because they're not subtle, but in terms of musicality, you know, it's not got big flamboyant choruses, it's not got a Marilyn Manson image, it's not got all of those kind of like big selling points that you can kind of grab.
They're not just talking about like guts and ghosts. They're talking about global warming and spirituality.
It's also quite challenging musically without having huge payoffs. You know, some bands, like, I mean, I guess like Slipknot had some
that is actually something I was interested in. I was like expecting, when I was going through the last 2 records, knowing that they were as big as they were, I was like, okay, I'm looking for the big fucking choruses that they're now putting in, and they don't really happen. They're still a fairly heavy technical band,
obtuse thing. It's like compared to the previous stuff, maybe it's slightly more chorus driven, but it's definitely still pretty dense. I mean, they get compared to Mastodon, but Mastodon are like a pop version of them, and Mastodon are very into their hooks. So I mean, I thought that was quite interesting. Musically, they don't put a lot of emphasis on the vocals, which is not to say that he's not a good vocalist. And I mean, they put a lot of thought into their lyrics by all accounts. It certainly seems that way. But the vocals play very small roles in the songs. In fact, I noticed that a lot of the choruses are actually defined by an absence of vocals. They're not really choruses. They're more like musical interludes between verses. And you know, again, McKenty, Punk Rock MBA, compared that to Pantera, where the vocals, for example, were forming these big hooks, and that was kind of where the band made its breakthrough. And I guess Gojira aren't Pantera, but what they do seem to be completely reliant on is just an abundance of riffs. Just a fucking procession of riffs. And as I said, you know, when I was asking you, are they as identifiable as people suggest they are? I don't know what they are, but seems to be a big part of their approach to that. I mean, I think I can relate to a lot of what McKenty was saying about them, because I find them really opaque, you know, quite impenetrable. So I think we're kind of coming from the same place on that. So some of the other names that we've mentioned here, obviously Meshuggah, Lamb of God, even Behemoth. Those are really, really riff-orientated bands.
Yep.
Don't you think?
Machine Head as well. Even because we were talking about albums to cover, Chimera. as well. On some of their early stuff and some of their sort of more memorable hooks, they have a slight new metal bounce to the riffs. Not in a bad way, but it's like
groove. It's
it's that
metal.
groove of, maybe like fucking Soulfly or something like that. That they're not afraid to embrace.
The Sepultura part of Soulfly.
Sepultura, that's what I was thinking.
I must be really out of touch with Machine Head. I just always associate them with the Burning Red now. Honestly, I just don't.
Oh no,
that's probably a good thing, to be honest. There's some howlers, particularly recently.
So the image thing, as we said, there's a lack of an overt image. I think that's actually quite likeable, but I think it's pretty brave in that marketplace to not have or to not try and do something outrageous. They're apparently not really big on socials as well, so they're not engaging with the celebrity side of it. You don't see them getting into spats with people, and they don't really
they get involved in like conservation drives and like do
HIV charities and things like that, and Greenpeace fundraisers and stuff like that.
They don't even really look like now, especially now, they don't even look like a metal band anymore, apart from the other guitar player. None of them look like they could be in a metal band. None of them have any tattoos either, which is fucking bizarre.
Yes. I think they were all out at some big protest in France not too long ago as well, a big street protest. So eco-consciousness is a big part of their identity, though, I think, and so it's kind of remarkable that that's what they've decided to go with in a market of gore and monsters and theatrics and creepiness and goth and all that kind of thing.
It's a testament to hard work, right?
It is.
Really.
It probably leaves a lot of metalheads cold, because metal is, for a lot of people, just about escapism, and Gojira are not really about escapism. In fact, quite the opposite. The things they sing about are very anti-escapist. They're like, no, wake up to the realities of the world, the dying world that you live in, and their image doesn't really provide that escapism either. That's what I mean. It's quite austere for a metal band.
But I think it's pretty clearly found an audience of people who are actually switched on and engaged as well, otherwise they wouldn't be selling out the Academy and all the dates on their UK tours, But
as Dave said as well, I think it's just a testament to sheer ability, because it seems that they've won over I think Punk Rock MBA mentioned this as well, that they've won over the mainstream audience, that kind of Metallica audience, just by virtue of the quality of their playing and the quality of their riffs and stuff. They've managed to change the minds of people that might have otherwise been like, fuck that, it's a bit too glum.
Bunch of fucking crusty miserableists.
And they're Grammy nominated as well.
Yeah, I know. Twice.
So one facet of their brand, eco metal, or as I saw it written, environ metal. That's fucking good.
Surely it's whalecore.
Honestly, whoever came up with environmental deserves a wee fucking applause. There's a lot of whale memes out there. There's one of the Deep from The Boys holding, the whale that dies on the beach.
Yeah.
And his Gojira fans be like. So some other bands, I was like, how big is this fucking movement of eco metal or environmental? God Eater from Glasgow. 2019 they brought an album out called All Flesh is Grass, and at that time they did a kind of interview thing for Louder Sound, which was about this movement, and they were asked to kind of name a few other bands from that movement. They picked Cattle Decapitation. From San Diego, who I had no idea about this. I thought Cattle Decapitation was picked a bit like Pig Destroyer because it's like totally gory and ridiculous, but they're all fucking vegan, vegetarian.
But they're actually really good as well.
Yeah, like death grind band, and lyrically incredibly stark, singing about things like animal testing and things like that. I had no fucking idea. I thought they were an outrageous bunch of little stoners that had picked the most shocking thing they could.
Yeah, our architects,
green, vegan. I think Sam Carter's the Sea Shepherd ambassador.
Yeah, it's a Sea Shepherd ambassador, that's correct.
Now, God Eater also picked out Rage Against the Machine. I thought this was quite interesting because obviously Rage Against the Machine are not like some renowned vegan or pro-environmental band, but he was like, their general anti-capitalist stance formed the kind of bedrock of a lot of these kind of like more heavy-duty protest metal bands. The point he made as well in that article was by just being anti-capitalist the way Rage Against the Machine were, and we all have different opinions and how seriously we can take that, but by being anti-capitalist you were inherently being pro-environmental because capitalism is a big driver of the damage that's been done to the environment.
Yeah, no, it's interesting.
I mean, I know for a fact that the bass player, even though he's apparently a dickhead in Rage Against the Machine, has definitely been a vegan for quite some time. I think he was like a PETA ambassador and stuff like that.
So another one that obviously God Eater mentioned was Gojira themselves. A final one was Fit for an Autopsy.
Put me in the fucking ground. Ugly fucking gods, ugly fucking heroes.
I don't know if you know that band, but
I do know that band.
Yeah, they're like Death Grind, aren't they?
Their single Mammoth was basically, the video and the song were all about the Dakota-Alaska pipeline and the fate of the indigenous people affected by it.
Didn't know that, that's pretty cool.
Elsewhere, some names that came up, Wolves in the Throne Room were mentioned in relation to this.
Pretty obvious.
Yeah, Wolves in the Throne Room and Panopticon are the other one. They occasionally get put as like pagan crossing over to right wing, but they aren't. They're just very much enviro, black metal, sort of anarchist, very lefty.
So it's a really interesting little nexus, if you will, of that scene. So Wolves in the Throne Room, I think, are an interesting example because they were these former lefty punks who sort of transitioned to you're saying not paganism, but kind of heathens, like kind of animism. You know, that religious school of animism. It's where, you know, nature is alive and there's kind of a very kind of ethereal and abstract notion of worship and oneness with Mother Nature and unifying energies, and we're all part of the same. You know, animism is just a very big and very old idea that predates most religions, actually. But yeah, that kind of heathenry aspect of it that's also quite Northern European as well. The black metal scene in general, because of its embrace of Scandinavian and Celtic lore to a lesser extent, has nurtured a lot of that ideology for good and bad, clearly, especially due to themes about returning to sort of primitive ways, harmony with nature, and also things like earth magic. You know, a lot of people are into that kind of mysticism. Some other bands that come up under that are bands like Kreusch, Compress, Vicent. Political Terror, Balderaz, Agrus, and one that I cannot fucking pronounce, which is Mulechoi. I think if I got that, by the way, I should get a prize.
The inflection really makes it.
And the one person who's nothing to do with metal, but that we should reference in relation to this when environmental concerns and music collide with interesting results is Lubomir Melnik. Which we spoke about a lot in that episode. He's so into animism that he believes that rocks are sentient creatures.
I remember that.
We just don't realise it.
So it is interesting, like going back to Gojira, I think very much they were shaped by where they grew up and reading a bit a bit about them. They seem to have a slightly sort of idyllic, creative childhood, and they were literally running around the forest as kids.
And the shore. They talk a lot about that kind of
that's it. They're
Basque shore and the whales, that fascination with the sea. I think there's one anecdote about them watching an oil spill. And
Jeez.
that being a really harrowing thing that influenced their beliefs.
Yeah. And then musically, I think very much shaped by, as I say, they say at one point, I listen to 70% classical music, and you can hear that, the syncopation and the contretemps is the official contretemps, that sort of on and off beat stuff, really sort of showcased in how technical they get. But then they were also listening to Morbid Angel. And Death, and Slayer, obviously. So.
Yeah. So, in terms of their albums and their timeline, taking a scoot through, their first record was 2001. It was Terra Incognita. Again, you mentioned Morbid Angel there. I've seen it compared to Morbid Angel meets Sepultura. Very heavy, kind of more direct death metal.
It's death metal. Actually, the band that I get most of it is Deicide.
Okay.
I think Deicide are actually underrated as a death metal band because...
Noted, added to the list.
Because their singer is so mental.
Yeah, he is actually fucking crazy.
But they're actually a pretty class band. Yeah, it's definitely more Deicide than, Mastodon or anything.
Yeah. Not the best production, but I mean, I guess it's their first record, and I don't know, I'd seen the word clunky used in reference to some of the songs on it.
Got a couple of highlights on it, I think. The first song, Clone, is really cool. It actually reminds me of Sepultura on the vocals quite a lot.
Yeah, it's like old school Sepultura, like Chaos AD era.
Or pre.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite funny because Mario's quite influenced by Igor Cavalera as a drummer.
Yeah.
And Joe, and I don't know if Mario, but Joe's definitely worked on the Cavalera Conspiracy record, one of them as well.
Yeah, I think the bassist was asked but couldn't do it, and then Joe said, could I do it? So he was then the bassist.
It's a weird aside, that apparently at some shows Joe and Mario will switch places, which is fucking mental.
That's pretty rad, yeah.
But no, that song's really cool. It feels like an actual death metal slammer. It's really vicious, and it's just riff after riff after riff, which is the whole catalog.
They still managed to get like a bit of groove in there, rather than just like...
Yeah, the song Blow Me Away has got like this undulating groovy kind of feel to it, which I quite liked. And they kind of do more of that as their career goes on. So already you can start to see some of the ideas that they would then take in further directions, like right from the very start. But we say right from the very start, they put out four demos as Godzilla before they got to this point.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like they really much they built momentum in France. They won like an unsigned metal competition in 1999, and they were putting out EPs, but they were doing like 400, 500 capacity shows before they put out their first record in France, and touring with the likes of Immortal and big metal bands. So they were in France. They were very much recognised as sort of the hot new thing to come out of French metal.
Another thing to notice noting this record is the song Rise has got a melodic part in it, which sounds very similar to what they would then later go on to do. I mean, it's a very samey record, right? But clearly thinking about ways to make it less samey, and they get better at doing that, obviously, as their career goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd seen it like The Link in 2003 is when they started to obviously show the first signs of having ambitions of branching out, we say. So it's more direct than the later stuff.
It's interesting, it sounds quite dry because where they were going to record, I think, fell through, so they there's no reverb or nothing on it. I think they recorded the link in 10 days. So it's not the album that they wanted to make in terms of sound, but they were fairly happy with it.
Yeah, but they also, as you mentioned, they put out a live version of it, didn't they? And I think a lot of people have said that seeing them playing live around that time, the songs are better live. Because they were so good as a band. I mean, some people actually put this behind Terra Incognita in their list of their albums. I mean, others think it's better in every way. I think that was the quote that Punk Rock NBA used about it.
I would say that it's certainly a more ambitious, relatively speaking. You know, it's the most ambitious thing I've done at this point. Embrace the World, like I said, it's a furious song. There's a slowdown in the second verse, which is like a really nice crossover between death metal and groove metal. It really works for me. And also has a beatdown, a legitimate beatdown in it as well at 1 minute 25, which is you just really don't hear. It's like, I guess that's where deathcore is, right? Deathcore kind of comes in with the beatdowns and the death metal style vibe, and it wasn't really a thing back then, and the fact that they kind of bring it in is, I think, pretty cool.
I think it's a very uneven record. There's bits like Wisdom Comes, I think, is very good technical death metal, and they also find that sort of headbanging groove. And then I think Remembrance, which is that video that I showed you, Chris, is one of my top 3 of any of their tracks.
Yes.
I feel a drop from medical desert, buried deep in my mind I forgot.
Perfect at what Gojira want to do in terms of like being technical death, but having this big fucking bouncy chuggy riff, but then there's some shonky moments on it too. Like Indians
is not great, no.
And then that Dawn has got this sort of vaudeville vibe. Not a big fan of that. And they're trying shit out and would have been great live, but it's not a record I go back to.
It was followed by From Mars to Sirius, the one that we're going to do, 2005. Big leap forward. We'll obviously talk about it in a bit more detail, but you start to see the environmental themes getting foregrounded properly in that one. And looking at the lists and the general discussion, it's every single person's favourite Gojira record. I didn't find a single person or a single kind of list that contradicted that. But as I say, that came out in 2005, and 2006 was their year. That was a huge year for them. So first of all, they signed to Prosthetic Records, who had previously done stuff with Lamb of God. I think Lamb of God did 2 albums in that label. That meant a big difference in terms of exposure, and it opened doors for future tours. In 2006, for Download, they were invited, they were kind of drafted in actually to replace Mastodon in the main stage. Don't know why. Did anyone know why Mastodon pulled out of that one? What was the deal?
Know.
I think it was injury. I can't remember exactly.
Haircuts.
Yeah.
Not quite cool enough.
Tattoos.
They were at that point where they were trying to go from being like hairy metal guys to being a little bit shorter haired and a little bit more.
A little bit. They were still proggy as fuck. That was when they did Crack the Sky.
Yeah, that was like Kings of Leon phase, right?
No, that was their fucking LSD time. They were smoking more weed than ever, I think.
So they get drafted in to replace Mastodon, which is a fucking huge deal because the headliners in that were Tool, Metallica, Guns N' Roses, plus Korn, Deftones, Trivium. There's fucking loads of people on that main stage, and they were in amongst like these big players.
But because they honed themselves on big stages in France, they came over and they fucking owned it. And I think everybody was like, we've only just heard of this band, how can they be so good?
Am I right in thinking it was around about that time when they first departed like France and played shows in America? They hadn't done that ever.
Their first UK show had been earlier that year. They played in Brighton, and they hadn't played in the States, or they just played around Europe.
Brighton is very much dipping a toe in, isn't it? It's
like play across the water, and then they were probably third or fourth off the top main stage at Download, and absolutely held their own.
So that same summer, they played the main stage at Hellfest in France, which is a very famous live video of them playing. If you check it out online, and they were alongside again Korn, Dead Kennedys, Motorhead, Soulfly. Yeah, if you want to see them in action, that Hellfest show from 2006 is very highly thought of. And then in 2007 took another big step. Did a US tour with Lamb of God, Trivium, and Machine Head, which is pretty much the perfect tour to try and crack the US market, isn't it?
You can't fuck around on that tour either, man. You need to be
on it.
Incredible,
2008, The Way of All Flesh, their fourth album at this point, which was apparently an album about the band members' own mortality. Randy Blythe, the Lamb of God, actually does a guest appearance in this one, doesn't he?
And Adoration of None. It's a fucking great song as well.
And as I said, this is part of that trilogy of albums that are triumvirate of albums that people think are very kind of close in terms of quality. It's not quite as inverted commas catchy as the predecessor album, but it's got some really interesting moments. The intro, The Art of Dying, for example. But anything stand out in it for you guys?
Ouroboros is really good. It's really straight up, it's quite melodic immediately, and production sounds absolutely massive. And then they're singing in this song. And middle 8 section has got this. It's like walls of like aching guitars, like just like bending and like swelling and stuff like that. And it's just ends with like thunderous riffage after him singing, which is fucking really cool, man. And again, just looking to expand the sound and the sonic palette of what they can do. Still pushing it.
Toxic Garbage Island is a good fun.
That's a great song, man.
Fun song.
Yeah.
To me, there's something about it that seems just slightly over-engineered. They like lose some of that primal edge that they had in the record before. The guitar tone reminds me of Slipknot Volume 3. It's like, I think the distortion is turned down a bit, and it sounds really nice, but it's not as heavy. There's a little bit more whittling. There's some, they like to whittle a little bit, and they're like a plumber getting into
where the fuck are you going?
Just a plumber whose career is going better. More taps. There's more taps. Just a lot more tapping.
More taps.
I literally was
plumbers put taps in.
You go into your house and there's like, instead of just being a hot and a cold tap, there's like multiple taps.
Yeah, let's put the medium tap in.
What do these all do? What does the fifth tap do? That does,
who knows?
Hope. It's the hope tap.
It opens up, gives you a direct line to Wales.
The country. This is the thing, flying Wales just sounds like a really cheap airline.
Yeah.
Anyway, so 2009.
Well, I'm still talking about this record.
Sorry.
I think, for instance, A Sight to Behold is like quite krauty prog. But it kind of comes off as a not as good cynic. I think Yama's Messengers should be really fucking heavy, but it just doesn't quite get the groove that they would have had on the previous record. I think maybe because of the production, and yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't have the dynamics of From Mars to Sirius for me.
Go back to Adoration of None. I think it's easily the most aggressive thing on this record, and Randy's voice does help that a lot. I think his voice is much more aggressive than Joe's. Completely different vocalists, obviously.
Yeah.
But
this is Randy from Lamb of God.
Yeah,
appears on it. Yeah,
lots of pick scrapes in it. Like quite a lot in that song actually, and there's a couple of dive bombs with like really dirty arpeggios towards the end of the middle eight, which are
I feel like we should
nice.
be doing pinched harmonics as we're talking, just randomly.
Yeah, can you just put them in edit? Just like
It's like they've established like a signature sound. We don't have a signature sound. Like we don't have vocal tics that really identify us as being us. Like if we each had a sound that we made, it would also be easier for people when they're like, which one's you? I listen to your podcast. Which one are you?
Which one are you?
I'm the one that goes.
I'm the one that goes.
I'm the one that goes.
There we go. We've nailed it on first take.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Can I go to 2009 yet?
Sure.
Yeah, 2009.
Big year. They went on a World Magnetic tour with Metallica. They actually also spoke really favourably of Metallica. Said that the guys, I think the quote is, made them feel really important. Metallica took them seriously, really loved being on tour with them, and it helped develop Gojira's confidence as a band a lot.
Do you know that Mario actually bodyboards with Rob Trujillo whenever he's in California?
Are you asking that because you think I will know that, or are you just being rhetorical?
I've been rhetorical.
Because if I was like, yeah, of course I know that.
I was hoping you would say that.
I've been with them. That's what was I doing last weekend?
I'm their photographer. So 2012, L'Enfant Sauvage.
Quite a big gap actually between records, that isn't it?
Yeah, they were busy.
Mm-hmm.
They were busy.
Yeah, they did like 300 shows, I think, in 2 years.
Yeah, that Metallica tour was fucking huge.
Yeah, they tend to be quite big. Yeah,
because like they didn't play outside of Europe or like mainland Europe until late 2005, and then I saw by 2020 they'd done 17 US tours. It's like, all right, fucking hell. So yeah, they do keep going.
So L'Enfant Sauvage, it kind of has a slightly more melancholic atmosphere, apparently based on a book. I think it's a true story of a feral child. It's a French author, I think. I can't remember enough, sorry, should have done research. Some folks have said it's a wee bit dumbed down as a record. Other fans kind of complimented the songwriting on it. It's certainly more concise time wise, and I saw that one of the tracks on it, The Gift of Guilt, is generally spoken about as being one of their best live tracks.
They said to Roadrunner for this record, which explains
Does that mean 15 digipack reissues?
Probably. There's probably another one coming out right now.
Haven't ever got paid for it.
But yeah, that would explain the quote unquote dumbing down, because it's you're going to get to a bigger audience at this point. You need to be a little bit more.
I think what
accessible.
It lacks, I don't think the drums or the structures at any point feel dumbed down. I just think the riffs feel slightly more reliant on zero fret chugging. Like they're doing interesting rhythmic things, but they're not doing much melody wise. You know, they're not doing a lot.
It's quite percussive and less tonal.
Yeah. And I when I was listening to this record, I was like, this sounds like a proggy Fear Factory.
I actually saw a few moments in their catalogue that had bits of Fear Factory. I heard Burton in some of their vocals as well. 2012, also they went back out Metallica for a stadium tour, playing capacities up to 75,000. 2016, Magma came out, went to number 24 in the Billboard charts, pretty high for such a kind of dense metal band.
Sold 500,000 records, this album.
And
a lot, man.
That's good going in for 2016. Well past that inflection point.
Absolutely.
Got a Grammy nomination for Best Rock Album.
And I believe they sold more physical records than DJ Khaled did. But DJ Khaled got
Where
to
is he
number one.
now?
Exactly. It was all streaming.
Wow.
You know?
The singles in this record really make it, right? When they play them live, they're fucking ginormous sounding.
Yeah, definitely.
Like Silvera. It's a good tune, an actual good hooky song.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about how I thought about them live. Oh, fuck it, I'll talk about it now.
Yeah, tell us now.
But like for me,
well, hang on, before you do that, can we just mention that apparently this album was written for their mother who was dying at the time. She was, I can't remember what, it's not Seychelles, is it Seychelles? She's from an island chain that was volcanic, and
I think it was Seychelles.
Magma was sort of related to her, and it was the two brothers' mother. Yeah.
But yeah, they played 3 songs from Mars to Sirius in the first half,
and 3 from this.
3 from this, including Stranded, which has got a big, massive chuggy riff, and then a big melody.
Yeah.
And for that first half of the live show, I was like, this is genuinely one of the best metal shows I've ever seen in my life. I was like, this is up there with Meshuggah. I'm having a really fucking good time. And then the second half of the set, they kind of went up to a few more of their slower stuff and like slightly proggier. And the second half to me was just like, oh, this is a bit soft. After they'd done like 35 minutes of like big fucking power groove metal that was so tight and so good, I was like, this is amazing.
That's like a team that goes 3-0 up at half time, and you're like, oh, this is going to be a 7 or an 8, and then they come out in the second half and do fucking nothing. It was still a 8 out of 10 gig to me. It was really, really good, but it was a 6 out of 5 first half. It could have been a 7-0, but they just eased off. Didn't want to pick up any injuries. That's what it was.
And to me, like the whole second half of the set was all songs from the last 3-4 records. I mean, like Magma's, pretty good. It's less death metal, slightly more doom occasionally.
There's a really fucking heavy ending on Lowlands.
Yeah, it's heavy, but that's the sort of mid-tempo thing that kind of loses me, that song, because it's got heavy stuff happening. Kind of just plods along a little bit for me.
It's interesting that this is their biggest record. This was their biggest record. Obviously, it was supposed to be. It was engineered to be less heavy. I think in the writing process, that was part of the thing they were doing. But there's still not really a lot of conventional song structures on it. Like even Silvera, which was the song. I think that was the song that was nominated for the Grammy. I think that one was, and that's not a conventionally structured song at all. And one thing that song does feature is a guitar solo, and one thing they don't do very well is guitar solos.
They really
not very good at them.
They're not very good at them. And feel like they do drum solos live though.
And funnily, with their fascination with whales, you'd think they'd do Moby Dick then.
That's actually a good point.
And then 2021 they brought out another album, and it's called Fortitude, and it went to number 12 in the Billboard charts, which is twice as high. I know that's not quite how the chart.
That's how maths works.
Before we move on to that, can we talk a little bit about Stranded as well from Magma? Just because that is
it worth going back to?
It totally is, because that is their signature song now.
Yeah, it's massive pop metal with a huge chorus, and it's a big monster of a riff, and they drop that and people go mental.
Yeah, because people did go fucking nuts when they played that song, and it is. I'd heard that riff before.
Yeah,
I just didn't know it was Gojira, because it is instantly. It's very unique sounding, because it's like the chug and then the pitch shifter sort of sweep, and it just sounds really weird but cool. You know what I mean? I could totally see if I was a young guy being like, fuck man, like that's cool, what is that? And you listen to that band,
that's a bouncy big boy.
Yeah, it's a big hook, man, you know.
So yes, Fortitude, more flavours of groove and sludge, I think. It kind of continues on from Magma a bit. A couple of interesting tracks in it. Was the Sphinx, the chant.
The chant is that was big live.
Oh, I didn't like the chant. I don't like the chant.
But I watched the Needle Drop review of this as well, and I think Fantano made an interesting point about the vocals in it. There's a lot of vocal harmonies kind of done in it, and he felt they were like really overproduced, like auto-tuned and tidied up to the point of sounding inhuman, like almost like synths.
They don't have another vocalist live, which is, I think, is also something that works to their detriment in a live setting. A lot of his vocals are double tracked. You lose a little
bit of yeah.
And they do have a few, obviously, got a fair amount of like reverb and stuff on his voice to make it sound a bit otherworldly, and it is buried more in the mix than you would necessarily think it would be for a band that big, playing venues that big. Who are now,
but on the later stuff, which relies a bit more on melody, you lose the melody live.
Totally, definitely. Yeah. I think Born for One Thing's a pretty decent song. Amazonia was the song they played in the encore, and that landed really well with the crowd, but I didn't really think much of it. And Into the Storm is another kind of proggy number, but I think that must have been a single, because it feels really open, and it doesn't really feel heavy, you know?
Yeah. I feel like this record, it's got a good energy to it. Like, they're fucking still going for it. It's well produced, but like some of the riffs, I'm like, oh, do you know what? I have probably heard that riff on a fucking Slipknot or a Chimera or a Strapping Young Lad or a Fear Factory record.
Yeah.
Whereas earlier on, you're like, oh, that's definitely a Gojira riff.
Amazonia was nominated for the Grammy as well, Best Metal Performance.
Yeah.
After that, they released last year the Our Time Is Now single on its own. Which I fucking love, by the way. I think that song's an absolute screamer.
Yeah, that is good.
It is.
They didn't play it, did they?
They did, yeah. Because he introduced it by saying,
oh yeah, that's right.
Hey, we released this song last year. We recorded it during the Amazonia the Fortitude sessions, and I was like, why did you leave it off the album? Because it's clearly it's the best single. It should have been on that record. That is very catchy. It's hard to say that about this band, because the one thing there rarely is catchy. No. Vocally, anyway.
Yeah, that's true. All right.
All that's left to do is tear apart this album.
Let's go through it track by track.
From Mars to Sirius, 2005.
And we'll try and do it quicker than the album, because it's quite a long album.
It's quite a long record, yeah.
From Mark to Weaver.
Yeah. It's Wales, mate. It starts with Wales, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you've got a nice front cover of a whale flying about the moon. It's not black.
It's white.
It's white.
It's not, that's something they do with their artwork. I
thought it was going to sound like David Gray.
It's not generically metal. It looks a little bit crusty.
So
yeah,
it starts with Ocean Planet, which is very in keeping with the artwork on the front.
Yeah. And I mean, you're really kicking off with key Gojira here. Those guitars sound fucking massive.
Chunky motif.
Big squeal harmonic, big pick scrape, stop and start, but still with groove. It's throwing you off a little bit. And if you're just here to go like headbang, they're like, you will headbang when we want you to headbang.
Headbang on command.
And then then it builds up to this big massive dramatic breakdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, I know you mentioned Burton, but to me, I think a lot of his vocals, particularly when he's doing a little bit clearer, are very Devin Townsend.
There's the two names I've got written in front of me here. Right
and sort of melodic but urgent and heavy. It works, because like Strapping Young Lad are fucking great.
Apparently, he gets a lot of people in the press compare his Queen vocal to Jazz Coleman.
Okay.
From Killing Joke.
Okay, interesting.
I like that song.
Yeah, I find this song a wee bit cold and mechanical. The guitar squeals are not really my idea of a good time. It's an ignominious start to a record for me, man.
Oh, see, I'm the opposite. I'm like, yeah, this is full blast. And then the final riff, it's just like, it sounds like the world is crumbling. It's really good.
It hangs on, for me, it does hang on that vocal, which is almost singing. You can straight away see there's a huge gulf in songwriting ability compared to the last record, and just general ambition as to what they want to do. I quite like the vocal approach in this song. It's still aggressive, but it's less death metal, and I quite like that. And yeah, that riff at the end is just heavy as balls, man.
And you've got Backbone
track 2.
That's a big riff as well.
Yeah,
so this is time for a full chug now.
I much prefer the opening riff in this to the previous one. Yeah, the big guitars have, I mean, the lifts, those kind of big ring-offs have a lot of Mastodon about them. So I can hear in this track that kind of crossover potential of like, why is this band big, and this track kind of makes that more apparent.
Yeah,
the vocals on it are still like cold, kind of concrete, very unforgiving. There's something quite distant about them that I find hard to relate to, and when the track kind of shifts into more tech metal, it actually starts to lose me. I mean, the speed stuff in it, there's a lot of speed playing in this. It's impressive, but it really doesn't get me going. I do, however, there's a really good kind of blasty synchronized riff that's about 1 minute 55 or something into this tune. That's a great wee bit. And they don't go back to it, and that was kind of annoying. And the other thing that really stood out to me is the end riff in this song is almost comically sinister. Like the notes they've done are like if you took like the Munsters and played them heavy as fuck. You know.
It's a real groove at the end of that, which I liked.
You definitely see that they're doing like Remission era Mastodon more than Slayer. Like it's not thrash, it's like sludgier than thrash. But I mean, one thing that you don't get often in death metal is a good sounding bass. The bass sounds really good in this. Yeah, it kind of soars up above sometimes, and the bass makes itself felt.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
From the Sky.
Yeah, big dramatic guy again. I feel like it's a very metal thematic riff.
I hear
the intro there.
I hear a lot of Entombed in this one. So there was a kind of feeling, I feel like my brain was getting hacked. There's a feeling of familiarity in that, and that familiarity made me kind of like it. However, like over the duration of the song, that lack of a chorus, it means it doesn't blow me away. Like I'm initially really quite, I like where this one's going. Yeah. And then it just doesn't do enough for me.
See, I'm the opposite, because it's like it breaks down into that sort of choppy thirds riff.
Reminds me of Machine Head, that riff.
Yeah, the dun 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 dun. The blast beats are just going, but then like this is where we're talking about Duplantier really making himself felt. Like another drummer would have just been like, all right, this is straight blast beats all the way through, but he's got these beautiful little fills and still got a lot of loose rhythm to it, sort of jazzy little slower breakdowns. I don't know, that just add a bit of space and feeling to it compared to a lot of straightforward metal. And then it's got a very Mastodon Leviathan-esque finish to it with the sort of cleaner guitar. And then into Unicorn, which is a little
kind of moody
breather.
Wee interlude thing. I mean, I guess this is there for pacing on the album. More than anything.
I think on later records they always have one or two like 1.5 minute instrumentals. But I think on this one, I think it works well because the chords and stuff actually fit rather than just going, let's do a minute.
benefits the other tracks on the album, really, by giving them a little bit of time to get your breath back. And
because I mean, death metal albums on the whole are quite fucking
draining.
Relentless.
Yeah, and especially one as heavy as this that lasts an hour. Thank the fuck for these little breather bits, but they aren't just like nothing. They do actually work.
I will say, this seems like it has a bit of purpose, because it's definitely intended to build up and set the scene for Where Dragons Dwell, the fifth track that comes in. The nature of Unicorn showcases the hugeness of the opening riff on Where Dragons Dwell, which is really big. Albeit, I have to be honest, it didn't really work for me as well, like least of all because of the reliance on those fucking pinches.
There's a lot
of pinches in this one, and I have to say that the longer that Where Dragons Dwell went on, the more it bored me. I didn't like it.
I like the structure of this song. Again, it's just keeping things interesting by slowing things down and having like the bell. It's like bell-like open notes when they slow it down, and they're bookended by like big chunky shuffling riffs, which I think is pretty cool. There's a doomy bit around 3 minutes 40. Which then has a vocal over it, which sounds really creepy.
Yeah, quite desperate.
Yeah,
vocal,
double tracked as well, so it does sound kind of off.
And then it's got a fade out, and I fucking love a fade out.
Oh, I love a fade out.
I love a fade out on a metal song,
especially when it fades out into the next song.
Exactly, and when the next song is the heaviest matter in the universe,
literally.
I mean, that's a very well named song.
Better opening riff, definitely. And in this one, even the pinches work for me. As much as I'm saying the pinches sometimes jar me, they do work in this one.
It's got a kind of forward motion to the whole song. So like doesn't get caught. The pinches aren't just like they are part of
what's going on. The thing that gets me in this one is the double kick is starting to grate on me a wee bit, and I don't think it's this song's fault, but it has been preceded by a lot of double kick, and so that was starting to fucking do me in a wee bit. I mean, this track does it has a lot of stomp to it within that. I mean, even though the double kick is absolutely fleeing, it does have a kind of chunkier momentum underwriting it. But again, these songs really fucking lack choruses. They don't have these pivotal moments. They go from a verse, sometimes a good verse, into a sort of break, like a kind of the chorus thing that's just sort of there as a gap till the next verse, and that seems like the inverse of what I expect. And I know they aren't a pop band, but they just going into those rather than elevating the tune. I don't know.
This is where your upbringing as a child of grunge contrasts with my upbringing as a child of metal, isn't it?
This is the ABBA in me.
I think this song, it's heavy as fuck, man. It's just riff after riff, but I think a lot of the songs are riff after riff. You could say it about any Gojira song. It's good riff after good riff after good riff, but for some reason it seems to be assembled in the optimal fashion. It's like the optimal delivery method for these riffs is this particular song.
You said that like you were from Edinburgh. The optimal fashion
delivery.
The optimal fashion.
The optimal riff delivery. Should have that in a t-shirt. You'd have that in a poster.
And then it's kind of, the end of this song's maybe the most Meshuggah they get on this record.
Yeah, it's
so
great, man.
I'm very happy with that.
It was incredible life.
Fucking unreal.
I hadn't heard this song and I almost lost my shit, man. I was like, holy fuck, man, what am I listening to?
And then it moves into Flying Whales, which I guess would be the
Wheezer.
Flying Whales,
the country of Wales. That's how you say Wales, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you do say Wheezer.
Wheezer.
This WH thing you do is controversial, to say the least, amongst our listeners.
I mean, I'm called Weaver. I know how to say W. I just occasionally say Weezer accidentally.
Just walking around the street.
But yeah, so I guess this is the thematic and the musical centerpiece of the record.
Yeah, it's the most streamed as well by quite a distance.
Yeah.
It's a fan favourite for sure, man.
I had big expectations for this one because I'd seen it mentioned just a lot in discussion of the record, and it started in that kind of mellow, kind of Tool vein. You know, it's got that kind of like mantra-esque thing going on. Whale noises throughout, heavy touch piece, man. But the riff that arrives at 2 minutes 30 is the best one on here. I love it. It's really good. He's judged his vocal pitch quite well in it as well. He's kind of modulated it a wee bit, and I think it really brings a lot of their elements together. It's got bits of Strapping Young Lad, it's got bits of Mastodon, it's got that Tool opening, it's got a lot of Sepultura and Entombed.
Yeah, even early Pelican and Isis as well. I would say it's got.
I'll not hold that against it. But yeah, I think it's a good showcase piece for what they do as a band.
When the heavy riffs come in, they're not heavy because they're obviously judged differently because of how melodic the song is in places. And it actually goes to show that they've done it from the record when you were talking about Unicorn, and then they moved to the next song. And you had that melodic passage. It just makes the big groovy riffs feel more weighty. You know, they feel like they've got more purpose as opposed to just being slung at you one after the other. Like, oh, I've got this really cool riff, lads. Okay, I've got another one. Okay, I've got another one. Right, what we got to do with them? Just play them back to back. Okay.
I like it when people use an adjective as a noun. So when you said it makes you feel the big, I just thought that was...
it makes you feel the big.
Yeah.
It does. I felt the big.
I was like
a whale.
Listen to that. I wish I was 6 when I first heard this riff, because like I would have just loved to fucking go mental to air guitar with my foot on the sofa to this.
I bet your folks are delighted that didn't happen.
That's the best written song of their career thus far, right? Yeah, I mean, it has to be.
From what I've heard, yeah.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah. In the Wilderness, track 8, really deathy.
On my way to the physical tube, enter galaxy rising, and I lit all this road.
This is the heaviest song on the record, I would say, and it comes after like the big standout one. And it struggles a little bit because it's come after such a good song.
It's also too long.
Yeah, it's really fucking heavy. It's really unrelenting. It's got really beefy riff, and I think 4.5 minutes of probably the heaviest bit of the album. And then the final 3 minutes open up to this big euphoric open guitar, really, really big riff that works.
I really like the ending. I think it's really good, yeah.
But I think that first 4.5 minutes could have been the first 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Probably. And then you go to World to Come, which is sort of slows down. This is like bluesier.
Quite bluesy, yeah.
It's fucking Alice in Chains at points, man. It's got a kind of alt rock vibe to it, and the nasal backing vocal.
The water is so clear, and the birds are alive.
Is that the jazz thing that they're talking about, that vocal when he does that one?
I think so, yeah. I thought you were talking about jazz, the music.
Sorry.
I had to just compute that in my fucking head.
The tune really didn't do anything for me at all. I would happily have not listened to it.
It's just an intro really to From Mars, isn't it, I guess? Yeah. And I like that it's here because from a pacing perspective it really works after In the Wilderness and then From Mars, which is kind of folky almost.
From up there I will see where I'm from, and where force of love will tell me now.
They
go from like bluesy to kind of folky, and I like that they're opening up their palette here on both these songs.
And then To Sirius is just another big lad, another big boy.
Big lad.
I lost the world and almost straight across the sky to find
See, when it goes around 3 minutes and it goes really slow, I think it's my favourite riff on the record.
Yeah. It's a total banger.
It's quite sludgy almost.
I think it loses me a wee bit, this one. About 4 minutes they do quite a strapping young lad vocal thing that kind of woke me up a wee bit, but the riffing on this one just did start to, it was knocking me out.
Mm-hmm. And then finisher of Global Warming.
Global Warming, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's
tapping,
weird.
A lot of tapping. It's proggy. It's got a nice big chorus.
Singing about things from outer space. I'm not quite sure what the lyrics are, but they came from outer space.
I liked that it was completely different. It was much more of a song.
Yeah,
I think than any of the other tunes.
I don't like it when the guy sings, man. I think his nasal stuff is pretty stinky. As a passive listener as well, at this point, I felt that this was over long. I mean,
it is too long.
Maybe it's great. I kind of believe that it probably is if you're into it, but I'm fatigued at this point.
I think it is. It probably could be a little bit shorter, this record. Or I like a riff, mate, but I don't need to be hit with it for 7 minutes. You like the variety of them for 7 minutes, you know.
Like if I'm going to listen, I don't listen to this album the whole way through a lot, but if I want to listen to Gojira, I will go to this album and I'll just pick a song at random and I will go, yes, that's a good one.
Optimal riff delivery.
Exactly.
Optimal riff delivery.
Optimal riff delivery system.
So, in conclusion, I'll give my thoughts first, shall I? Because I'm sure you'll want to rebut them. I've got to admire the sincerity. I do. I like their aesthetic and their general vibes, that down to earth thing. But I prefer the Shug for their extremity. I prefer Entombed for their hooks and for the kind of stripped down raw nature of it. I prefer Mastodon for the hooks. I just don't care enough about this to imagine spending a lot of time with it. I do think things like Flying Whales are. It's a great bit of music. In terms of the unsung nomination, I do not dispute that for fans of the genre this is a good record. I don't dispute that for a minute, so I don't want to be like strawmanned on that, right? But I kind of agree with Punk Rock MBA that Gojira have like exceeded what I would have thought was their crossover potential. They're already bigger than I would have thought a band that played this kind of stuff would probably get. They've been in 2 world tours with Metallica, as well as incredibly prominent US tours with like Lamb of God, Machine Head and Trivium. They've done main stages at really key points in their career. They've had a lot of fucking good breaks. They've had a double Grammy nomination. They've had 500,000 sales for a record at a time when records didn't really sell all that much. And this is their biggest album this is their best album, put it that way, not their biggest selling, but their best album in the eyes of every single fucking list I could find. I don't think they're unsung. I think if anything, they have vastly outgrown what I would have thought their potential was, and I'm happy for them. No axe to grind, but I don't think it's unsung in context.
Having researched them over the last week, I would probably say actually they're not unsung. They're bigger than I thought they were, but I think this record, although it's critically and in terms of fans love it, it still has less plays than the other records, and it's sold far less, and to me it's not a perfect album. I think it's overlong. It definitely owes quite a lot to the first 2 Mastodon records, but I think it stands out because it's ridiculously fun if you just want to fucking bang your head. I think it's a kind of new type of heaviness that you can't really hear anywhere else, like specifically. I think it's technical, it's got groove, it's got a bit of feeling, it's got a very sort of distinct vibe and narrative. It's the only Gojira record I want to listen to, and to me it fits perfectly into some of the best mid-2000s metal albums that came out. I think it fits with the 2 Mastodon records, Leviathan and Remission. I think it fits with Nothing and Catch 33 by Meshuggah, and even with Jane Doe and You Feel Me Converge. I'm putting it in my top 10 metal albums of that decade for me. And just musically, they weren't afraid of silence on this record, which they sort of became afraid of later on. They were scared to stop. I feel like this is a sort of aberration of a record, because to me it's the most Gojira album, but it's the one that sounds most different to the rest of the records. And yeah, I think at their best they sound like the sort of the primal monstrosity of Meshuggah with the unhinged sort of sci-fi melody of Strapping Young Lad, and that's a good thing.
I like the story of this band. You know, it's hard to be a unique metal band, let alone hard to be a unique metal band that gets to be this size. The same as, I guess, both of you. I was not ready for how big these guys were. I didn't expect it to sell out the Academy, and it was sold out. I don't think they're unsung. I think I agree with that general sentiment, but I think this record should go in because I like it.
Yeah, it's a really good record.
That's not how things work around here.
I know. I mean, I think it's hard because, you know, Slayer is just like a genre of music. Gojira was just become like a genre of music.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, Slayer aren't unsung, but we put in their
South of Heaven.
Well, I guess it's not there critically.
Yeah, exactly. It was unsung within their catalogue.
I know, but also it's their best. Whereas this is just the best one. This is the only one worth listening to be honest, to me.
I think a lot of people would shoot you down for saying that.
Yeah, I know, exactly. So I'm coming out here with my hot takes. I think
that's what we're all about.
I think this band are oversung apart from this album. Get the rest to fuck. That's my hot take.
Cool. Alright, I'm glad we cleared that up.
Make ourselves a target there.
Yeah.
We thought we were getting the Gojira fans on side, and we've alienated them all right at the death.
Aye, fuck off.
Okay, well, Dave, welcome back. You are the first one up for the Nexus this week.
A complicated series of connections between different things.
Alright, I'm sorry. This one's quite long and
well, hang on.
Could be exciting, but it could be boring.
Okay, we'll find out. The Gojira Nexus was chosen by Anonymous Bosch, recent sub, and the person is Jimmy Shand.
Jimmy
Shand, by the way, legendary Scottish folk musician who recorded more songs than the Beatles and Elvis put together.
Yeah, he did sell more records than them, but he recorded more songs.
Got an MB for
There was a folk band up my way, the woods, called the Jimi Shandrix Experience.
That's all right.
So Joe and Mario's dad, as we've already discussed, is Dominique Duplantier,
the famous architectural sketch
drafter and painter. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure it's a household name.
So he graduated from the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, which is the very well regarded art school in Paris, with alumni including Claude Monet, Henri Matisse, and Renoir, first name redacted. Now, well, basically, there was a type of architecture that came out of that school called the Beaux-Arts Architecture, and I mean, I could talk. It drew upon the principles of French neoclassicism.
Mark, do the metrics for like listener stats go?
Can you see people go get bored?
You see them tuning out?
I mean, it incorporated Renaissance and Baroque elements and used modern materials such as iron and glass. Blah blah blah.
Iron and glass in buildings. It's pioneering stuff.
Anyway, the supreme example of that type of architecture was the Grand Palais des Champs-Élysées, commonly known as the Grand Palais. You all know it. It's a beautiful building. You've all been to Paris.
Yes, and the Champs-Élysées.
Now in Mission Impossible Fallout,
okay, I'm loving this journey already.
The last one, I think it was the one where he.
Yeah, was it? I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's got the big fight at the end with a nuclear bomb and a helicopter. Anyway,
yes.
Ethan, aka Tom Cruise, meets Rebecca Ferguson, aka Isla Faust, and begs her to blah blah blah. Shitey happens, but it all happens in the gardens of the Grand Palais, and it is a very beautiful place, very nice. Now, seeing Mission Impossible, the first one. I remember going to see that. I think I must have been my 8th birthday.
Have you seen it since?
Yeah, it's great.
It's fucking. It's the narrative is just, it's deliberately obtuse, man. It's proper Brian De Palma
it's really
film.
good, and it's a noir film really rather than an action
but it
film.
doesn't make any sense.
But
it's great.
Weirdly, they get the Channel Tunnel, right? They're going from London to Paris, and they get on to go under the Channel Tunnel, and it's a plot point, and it ends in the Channel Tunnel. But rather than getting on the Eurostar, they get on the TGV, the French, bullet train thing, and that in England. And that doesn't go in England. To me, that was the most... I was 7 years old, and I was like, that's the TGV in England. They're going through fucking Kent in a TGV, and that simply doesn't happen, because we all know that the Eurostar is the train that goes under the tunnel.
As opposed to the masks and stuff like that. It was the train that
the TGV is run by the state-owned SNCF.
Oh my God.
Which is basically a network rail of France, except they own trains and they go fast and they work. In the 80s, the SNCF co-owned the Hoverspeed company. Now, I don't know if you can remember this, but up until 2000, from 1981 until 2000, they had fucking massive hovercrafts that went across the channel.
I heard about that.
They were like class. Yeah. And then in the 90s, they also introduced the Sea-Cat.
Yes. I remember the
big catamaran. But they don't do that anymore.
They've just hydrofoil. Is that right?
Yeah, well, they were just big catamarans. But they don't have that now. They just got fucking boring boats. Who gives a shit? Just a ship. But anyway, the Hoverspeed was also co-owned by British Rail.
Okay.
So it was like, half owned by British Rail, half owned by French Rail.
One half it worked.
And then they put... it was a boat that floated, and they called them flights. But anyway, British Rail in 1985 named a locomotive the Jimmy Shand.
The Jimmy Shand. You really pulled out of the fire then there.
You hit a wall.
Oh, thanks.
Mine is mercifully short.
It's nice to be back.
Yeah, totally, man.
This is the easiest one we've done for quite some time. Some of the last few have been hideous, but I found this surprisingly simple. So the bonus edition of this album's got a cover of the song Escape by Metallica. And in 2021, I think
Jimmy Shand was in Metallica.
He might be on this next record if we're still around.
Addition to be the new bassist.
So I think we spoke about this before, but in 2021, through their own Blackened Recordings record label, Metallica released the album. They curated the album and released it on the record label called the Metallica Blacklist, which is a huge tribute to the Black Album with songs covered by 53 separate artists that include such wide range of people, from like Kamasi Washington to the Neptunes to Biffy to Sam Fender, St. Vincent, Miley Cyrus and Elton John, who both did one of the big songs. It's totally escaped me.
Every day for us something new. Open mind for a different view. And nothing else matters.
That's usually frantic.
So there's two ways to get to Jimmy Shand from here, right? But they both go via George Martin. The first one is that George Martin produced the 1997 song Candle in the Wind by Elton John. And the second one is that Giles Martin was actually an executive producer on the Metallica Blacklist record, and he was George Martin's son.
Right.
And Jimmy Shand's most well-known song is the Bluebell Polka, which was produced by George Martin.
Well, there you are.
Didn't know that. Okay, guess what I'm going to get?
Nazis.
You got it. So Gojira, the Sea Shepherd organisation who we touched on earlier on, named a boat MS Gojira after the band.
That makes sense.
I think it was around about 2012, but they were forced to change the name of it to the MS Bridget Bardot, I think, due to the Japanese company that owned the Gojira copyright.
Copyright infringement.
Yeah, which is kind of funny.
Well, Gojira had to change their name from Godzilla because of copyright. So
mad.
Can't have it both ways.
And when you consider the sort of like rebellious nature of the Sea Shepherds being forced to change the name of your boat because of copyright infringement, it's a little tame, but there you go. The Sea Shepherds, despite backing from two former Bonds and Sean Connery and Pierce Brosnan, have been referred to as eco-terrorists frequently, including on the floor of the US Congress and in leaked UK policing documents that actually placed them on a list alongside Combat 18 and various National Front spin-offs.
I don't think ramming whale ships is exactly the same, but
they're not popular, to be fair, with Indigenous people in Canada because they were anyway, that's another story. Another person referred to in both the US and the UK as an eco-terrorist is Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. A lot of his motivation for his acts was related to environmental issues in a kind of twisted way. And as a result, Ted Kaczynski is held up as a role model by a variety of nefarious characters. The 2019 Christchurch attacker in New Zealand and the 2022 Buffalo, New York supermarket shooter are two examples. The latter actually quoted Ted Kaczynski's manifesto in his own writing, and both of them are seen as eco-fascists. In fact, in the case of the Christchurch shooter, self-identifying as an eco-fascist, with their deeply held ecological beliefs nurturing and supposedly justifying anti-Semitism. Eco-fascism. Interesting and a growing manifestation of the far right, whereas traditional far right thought stems from, let's say, extreme neoconservatism or conservative religiosity, and it tends to deride climate issues. So let's say far right politicians play down renewables in favour of fossil fuels, partly due to their backers, partly due to lobbyists, and also due to their own interests. And one example of that would be Dick Cheney, who was chief executive of Halliburton, who secured a large portion of the oil contracts in Iraq, which was an invasion that Cheney played a huge role in actually implementing in the first place. And likewise, the extreme religious right, and this also, by the way, includes non-Christian. We're not just talking about Christian fundamentalists here. They often scoff at the notion of environmental catastrophe for obvious theological reasons, because they don't think that the world can end when it's not meant to end, and they all have their story arcs. Apparently that's how religion works, and none of those story arcs seem to be that we very slowly and gradually cook ourselves to death. So yeah, and obviously on top of that, you've got a lot of them believe we're living in the end times, and they have these millenarian sort of delusions that they think environmental disaster is actually an example of them coming true. Okay, so ecofascism is really fascinating in as much as it's a much more three-dimensional version of extreme right-wing politics, because it sees environmental activism become a central theme of familiar far-right tropes. So that would be like, protection of the environment also dovetails with anti-Semitism, or it dovetails with white supremacy. Again, that was a big thing in the black metal scene, in the Scandinavian black metal scene. This has led to this kind of confusing Brave New World where all these militant environmentalists end up sharing, the same meetings as these right-wing libertarians whose kind of I'd say their unlikely ideological bonds have been very much reinforced in recent times as well, due to anti-vaccine hysteria of COVID-19, because obviously your holistic medicine hippies meet your 4chan anti-Jewish microchip in the vaccine kind of nut jobs and form a really nice little club. So it's really not hard to link some of the people that would quote it, like Anders Breivik, who also quoted Kaczynski in a bunch of his writing, to historical figures.
Cunt.
Yeah, to historical figures in fascism, including the end-of-level boss that is Adolf Hitler. Now, that brings us to the Shand Marino accordion.
Fucking hell. Somehow.
Because Jimmy Shand was looking to redesign the traditional accordion, reducing the 3 rows of keys on one side to just 2. This is in about the late 30s. Apparently it made it more balanced and easier to play.
Was it leaning heavier to the
right? He presented the plans for this new accordion, which was the Shand Marino accordion,
to Adolf Hitler,
to honour the instrument manufacturers who began working it prior to the outbreak of World War II. However, as trading wound down between the two camps, the Allies and the Axis, in the war, it actually was reportedly, anecdotally, Adolf Hitler himself intervened upon request to ensure that the Hohner prototype accordion was allowed to be sent to Jimmy Shand in Dundee. Wow. And then after the war, it was manufactured en masse and became relatively popular.
Goodness gracious.
There you go.
There we go.
That is impressive.
That is very
I didn't think
impressive.
you'd have one link between Hitler and Jimmy Shand.
I know, you would think I would be able to do that sooner, but
yeah,
brevity is not my thing.
Did you even have to do
Anders
research
brevity.
for that one?
Anders brevity, exactly.
Did you have to do research for that one, or was it just knowledge in your head?
You just knew that.
Yeah, totally. Keep me in a dream.
Well, that was nice. Thanks very much.
Thanks for being
You're
back,
welcome.
Dave.
That was very fun.
Nice to indulge you. I'm sure you'll be back to subject us to some more intensity soon.
I'm not. I feel like I've been stereotyped as metal, but that's completely fair.
It fucking sucks, man, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's because that is what it is.
So,
what do you do next week?
Well, we're not going to avoid intensity. We're going to stick with intensity. Only next week we're going to find ourselves jumping across the border into Russia.
More authoritarianism.
Yeah, but more authoritarianism. Big day for it, actually, today, with Putin giving his speech on the anniversary of the invasion. We are going to do a band called Short Paris. They're a Russian band, and the album that we're going to do, I can't read Cyrillic, but I think it's pronounced Pashka. I think it means Easter, but I will try and find that out properly by next week. I'm sure I know someone that can speak Russian, or just all the bots that email me.
Well, actually, the anti-vax woman in my close probably, she's a big Putin fan, so she'll probably know some.
Let's get on it. Let's ask her to translate for the show. The nexus for that will be, we're going from them to Brawillie.
What the hell's that?
Brawillie, courtesy of Catalyze, who I believe is in Canada. Brawillie.
Well,
okay, cool.
We'll have to find out who
Brawillie
that is.
to Short Paris in Russia. Let's see what happens with that.
Great.
Well, Dave,
that's been lovely.
Any plans?
Thank you.
No, don't think so. Just gonna go home.
That's not so good. Next time you're here, tell us. We'll come up with something in advance.
Do you know what the next gig? The next big gig I'm going to is Cannibal Corpse. So maybe we could talk about Cannibal Corpse at some point.
Okay, dope. Right. See you next week for some authoritarianism.
Okay, bye.